Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Golf Insider webcast and podcast. I'm Jeff Bergerson, joined as always by my partner, Zachary Turcotte. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary. So we have a nice little 40 to congratulate us here. We are with fantasygolfinsider.com, where you need to go on and sign up for a premium membership for the PGA Tour and European Tour and get access to all of the tools and articles that you need to become a successful DFS golf player. We are also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so be sure to go on there and check us out, give us a good review, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Before we recap the Quicken Loan, Zachary, some shout outs to go out to FGI members last week who had good weeks that we heard from. Adam Goudreau, Scott A. Mills, Derek Cogswell, Rad CP, who had a winning week playing the European Tour off our European Tour package, and Mark Mercado, who said it was a tough week, but he came out positive. And sometimes
it's all you want.
Right. If you have a bad week and you can break even or come out with a little loss or a little gain, that works. So good job, guys. Keep up the great work. Keep working hard. Let's recap the Quicken Loan, should we?
Okay. It was a weird one. I looked at it. I made 23 picks for the week. 21 of them made it through the cut, so that was exciting. We had a pretty good weighting for John Rahm, which was great. We went 25% with Rahm, which I felt like we were in pretty good position going over the weekend. But we still struggled a little bit. We had one key miss in Adam Hadwin, who was one of my core players for the week, who looked just fine on Thursday.
Oh, yeah, he looked great.
Just great.
Yep.
Came out and just died on Friday. I mean, he played about his worst round of golf.
Yeah.
All
and he
season
couldn't putt.
long. And that was what absolutely killed me, was the guy couldn't putt.
Right.
And Wilkinson, who's been a favorite of ours for quite a bit of the year, down at 6,000. Again, the guy looked pretty good the first round. And the second round, he was saving himself again and again. He couldn't hit a fairway. He couldn't hit a green, but he was scrambling like a maniac. And it looked like down the stretch, he still had 2 par 5s in the last 4 holes. All he needed to do was birdie one of those, and then just par out on the others, or even pick up a birdie on 8 just to make things safe.
Right.
But couldn't do it at all. Finally, he actually had a 6-footer for birdie on the 6th hole. Couldn't get it done. 7, he misses the green and hit about the worst shot from out of the rough imaginable. One of those shots where you're 30 feet away from the pin when you start the shot, and you're about 70 feet away after you've finished the shot, and then he ended up 2-putting that one. So that was rough. He ended up missing the cut. So we had those 2 guys miss, and really what ended up happening was we had a really strange scoreboard at the top, and we have Billy Hurley III running away with it on Sunday.
Can we finally just put that nail in the argument against tournament history?
I think so, because between Billy Hurley III and Robert Garrigus, both of those guys who you never would expect to jump up at all. And we talked about it.
John Haw. There's tons of guys.
Yeah, exactly. The old timers there. You had DJ Singh and Ernie Els, guys who just coming out of the woodworks again.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable with the course. And the other thing with Hurley that a lot of people also would say, well, it's not really a factor. He's born and raised, grew up in the area, Naval Academy graduate. So very, very familiar with the course. So, again, we're not saying that people have to use that as the be-all, end-all in terms
not
of
100%
ranking, but
the clowns who are out there saying it has no relevance,
no bearing, right?
They were also chirping on Twitter for a long time, and now
they're not
nowhere
chirping
to be
at all.
found.
Exactly, so. and that's nice, because what we're going to see here over the next few weeks is you're going to get to see Billy Hurley III on a lot more tough courses for the rest of the season. And I would anticipate his performance will revert more towards Billy Hurley III style performances.
I think in his career he has like 100 PGA Tour appearances, like 8 top 10s and 3 are congressional.
He had never finished, I don't even think, in the top 3 in an event before, and he crushed it yesterday. He was
3 out of 8 career top 10s are on one course.
He was amazing down the stretch. I thought, well, this is the point where he breaks under the pressure. Oh no, he's just going to chip in for birdie here to seal it up. Oh, he's going to knock in another birdie. You want to just absolutely running away. So that was exciting for him and life-changing for him. Not as life-changing for us.
No.
For the week.
Not as exciting for the Hyundai Tournament of Champions people either.
We add another big name for the...
On to Jim Herman, Brian Stewart.
Yeah, Billy Hurley III. There's been a whole bunch of...
Vaughn Taylor.
They had like 14... There's been like 14 first-time winners or something crazy this year.
Yeah, it's been outrageous.
It's been... but I mean, it was good to see him. I mean, considering everything that happened last year with his dad.
Yeah, great story.
If you're not familiar with that story... it really warmed your heart, didn't it?
I'm happy for you.
You're such a sentimental guy. Tugged at the heartstrings. Yeah. So, that was good. So the picks, I didn't think were bad. I just felt like a lot of guys gave just harebrained performances. A lot of guys got off to great starts. I saw Lovemark.
Well, that's going to flow into our shot of the week.
Yeah.
So you like to call it, what is it, the postage stamp?
The postage stamp. A lot of guys were eligible. Definitely a lot of guys eligible.
That's
yesterday.
our shot of the week. For those guys, the postage stamp who mailed it in over the weekend. That is Tony Finau, Charles Howell III, Jamie Lovemark.
Yeah, I love started early.
This was my favorite tweet of the week. We got it from, let me see here, Amateur Hour. His handle on Twitter is Brother Cherry. He says, or you tweeted, what the F happened to Jamie Lovemark? And he responds, he probably went to Georgetown, destroyed some intern, and blew his mojo. So
at least, I mean, that'd be better than any other alternative for me. If he said that, I'm going to end up, I could live with that. I could live with that as a response for absolutely gutting my core of players this week.
Kevin Chappell was another guy who just kicked it in. Ricky Fowler, Patrick Reed.
Yeah, Reed just fell off a cliff.
Wow.
A lot of guys up at the top just played miserable golf over the weekend. And you look at the top of the leaderboard. There's Ernie Els. There's Billy Hurley III, BJ Singh. I mean, the only guy who was up there who was maybe not a surprise was probably Bill Haas.
Right.
Who had a nice weekend after playing just garbage for the last couple of months. Once again, course probably didn't help him out in terms of getting back on track since he had only won there a couple of years ago.
That's right. Yeah. Another guy who mailed it in before he even started, Bud Cauley.
Wasn't that great? I mean, we could almost do our shot just for Bud. He actually showed up to the tee box before he, at the last possible second.
What a dick.
Elected to withdraw, screwing countless fantasy fans all over the country. And you in particular.
I was one of them. So
you didn't have much money on that team, though, did you?
Right.
So it was interesting. It was a weird event. Obviously, an invitational, so getting guys through the cut wasn't the be-all.
No, it wasn't.
End all. So it was a little bit of a struggle. The guys just didn't play great over the weekend. Still feel good about the picks. I just don't feel good about the way that a lot of them performed the last couple of days. So
let's turn the page. Cheers.
Cheers.
On to the WGC-Bridgestone from
Wacky Wager.
Oh,
Wacky
go ahead.
Wager.
Wacky Wager. Did you win? You must have won because you're mentioning
I'm bringing it up. So obviously I won.
All right, go ahead.
Improving to 16-10 on the season. Took out Josh Eggleston in a very tight battle. Both ended up getting 5 players through the cut. Wilkinson screwed me. Palmer ended up screwing him. So we had 5-on-5 getting through. It looked like he had a pretty commanding lead into the weekend. I thought I was probably dead by Sunday. I was ready pretty much to just get his address and start sending things off. And then Tony Finau played the last 10 holes for him and shot +8 over the last 10 holes. And I managed to beat him by all of about 5 to 6 points. So another very, very close, dramatic finish for the victory. So
and what'd you win?
It was a Scotty Cameron head cover for my putter. So it'll more than likely just get displayed right here on the set for the summer.
For the summer?
Yeah, exactly. In perpetuity.
Right.
Yeah. So, a win is a win. I'll take that. And we're looking for wacky wagers here this week. I'm interviewing some potential candidates so I can stay ahead of the game.
Send in your resume.
We got a few offers that are out there. I'm still kind of thinking about what I want to do. But we'll have that somewhere displayed on set. Maybe I'll put it on one of these wine bottles or something. I don't touch those either. So yeah. So another victory at the Wacky Wager. Oh. And speaking of amateur hour, who I defeated just a few weeks ago and who I know will be watching this year, I'm proudly sporting here my newest prize here. He got this from Pebble Beach at the U.S. Open back in 2010.
Sweet.
Nice little comfy pullover here.
That's cool.
And so I appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun. Lots of good prizes this year. I'm really enjoying all the prizes that people have been sending. So let's keep them coming this year. Good job, guys.
So on to this week, like I was started to say, the WGC-Bridgestone, a smaller field this week.
Really small.
Yeah, only like 60-some guys,
60,
right?
yeah.
60 guys, plus then you could probably take a Sharpie to many of those names in there and just scratch them off.
Like Billy Hurley III.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Well, remember last year, it was funny, because I remember the Quicken Loans last year. I remember Troy Merritt dominated, just like Billy Hurley III. Dominated, different courses obviously, but he won in pretty dominant fashion. Wasn't really all that close. And then came into this event, and there were a few guys out there who thought, oh, Merritt's really starting to turn it around. And they threw him onto their WGC roster. And it really didn't even matter that it was a no-cut event. It might have been better for Merritt owners had he just been done after round 2, because he played miserable, and he was dead last in the event. I think he was close to plus 20 or something crazy like that as far as how he finished. But he was DOA on the first day. So it should be a fun one this week. A lot of the guys are split off. They're over in Europe playing in that event. There's a lot of Ryder Cup points, a lot of guys fighting for spots on the team. So so we don't get Rory this week, which is a little bit of a disappointment. Yep. A little bit of a letdown. But it should still be a quality event. We get plenty of top-ranked players at the height of the field, so that makes it fun because we don't necessarily get to see those guys all together throughout the year. It's a no-cut event, which I think is important to consider. Yep,
and Firestone Country Club is a par 70.
Yes.
Course length's about 7,400 yards. Key stats this week, the normal strokes gained, tee to green, strokes gained putting. I also saw a big correlation with greens and regulation this week. You got to hit greens and birdie or better percentage and par 4 scores.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's 2 par 5s out there. It's going to be really tough to gain a lot of strokes. One of the par 5s is 667 yards long. It's about as long of a par 5 as you're ever going to see.
Right.
It's going to be just about impossible, even for the biggest of hitters to get there in 2.
So they're not getting there in 2 anyway.
And there's a huge pond in front of it as well.
Right. So everyone's laying up.
Everybody's
that gives the advantage to the shorter guys, actually.
Exactly, and you see that when you look at the history here. There's a lot of the guys who are bombers have done reasonably well, but the guys who have consistently done well year after year actually are just the more consistent guys off the tees. So definitely something to note for the week.
Okay, so why don't we start at the top? And I like Jason Day. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Jason Day this week. Anyone in that top range that you like?
Well, I think you have to at least consider Dustin Johnson.
You think?
Yeah. Now, he's jumped up. He actually leapfrogged Jordan Spieth, which is interesting in terms of the pricing this week because he's not jumped over him in terms of the rankings. But as far as DraftKings is concerned, he is now the second best guy within this field. His history here does not stand out at all. But statistically speaking, this year, the guy has been just outstanding in terms of the events that he's played. So don't get too much into just using the history this week because DJ's another one of those guys who's elevated his game this year, particularly with his putter. He is a guy who typically is one of the more mediocre putters out there. He's usually got a lot of birdie attempts and he's not converting.
Right.
This year he's converting those. You saw it down the stretch at the U.S. Open, just knocking down one clutch putt after another on Sunday afternoon to close things out. So even though he doesn't have a lot of great finishes here, I think he's definitely still somebody at the top that you have to consider.
Yep. I like Brendan Grace at 9,700.
Sure. Great play.
He looked good at the U.S. Open. He obviously won RBC Heritage.
2 par 70 courses.
Right. And I just think he's probably not going to be super highly owned because he's sandwiched between Matt Kuchar and Jim Furyk, who are going to be highly owned, I think. So I think that'll take the ownership off Brendan Grace.
And I think Brooks Koepka up there is going to be really popular as well.
I think so too.
He seems to be starting to really find his game over the last 3 times out. He's got a couple of second place finishes. He was top 15 there at the U.S. Open.
Yep.
So I definitely think he's starting to get it again. He's starting to live up to that. He's right under 10,000 this week. And he's always popular with the DFS community as well. So that's another good argument there again for Grace, because there's so many names that are packed right in there that guys are definitely going to overlook them unless they've got a lot of tournament history, which Grace's is good here. It's just not great.
Right. How low can Ricky Fowler go before it piques your
9,000. I mean, we were talking about this before the show started tonight, and I have to say, I think you have to be in on him this week.
Okay.
I think this is the moment. If you're waiting for a moment, he's not going to go below 9,000.
You wouldn't think so.
I mean, that would seem like that would be, I can't see him down at like 8,500. I mean, that just, it seems crazy to even fathom.
But he didn't look good last week again.
No, but he looked better. I mean, he was improving. Friday afternoon he looked like he was going to make a run.
Yeah.
And over the weekend, a lot of good players struggle with the course.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily going to hold that against him too much. This is a course that he's really been great at over the last few years. And I know his game is not that far gone right now. At 9,000, I feel like, and I'm typically late at pulling the trigger on this move. I always say things like, I want to see him have 2 or 3 good weeks. And then everybody's back in on him. I think if you're going to make a move on Ricky, this is definitely the week to do it at 9,000. I just think that's a huge value right there. It's a huge opportunity.
You just sold me just then.
All right. Good deal.
Man. I also like Jason Duffner at 8,500.
Yes.
I had mentioned greens and regulation are a key stat this week. He pounds greens. So I like Duffner at that price. You mentioned Zach Johnson's at 8,300. I'm okay with Zach Johnson there. Who else do you like dropping a little bit lower?
A guy I like every week, I like Mark Leishman down at 8,100. He just does everything well that you'd want to be able to do on a course like this. He's great tee to green. He's great in terms of, I won't say great, but I mean
the bastard didn't help the optimal lineup last week. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, he didn't help him on to victory. He made another cut, but
his stats are so
good. Stats are so good. Yeah, the tee to green game is there. The putting is there. He scrambles well. Par 4 scoring is there. I mean, he's just a solid all around player. And so at 8,100, we've seen what he can do here. 2 years ago, I think he was third. So you know that the upside is there, and I think there's going to be so many guys in and around that space that are going to be really popular that you can get in on him, and he's going to be at 12 to 15% range, which is not bad in a week where it's truncated and there's only 60 guys in the field. So I definitely like Leishman there. Okay. I think dropping down a little bit, I'm looking at Kevin Knott, 7,300. He's had kind of an up and down season. Started out in the fall and he was tremendous.
Yeah,
he looked really good. A lot of top finishes in that range. And then at the beginning of this year, he got into a little bit of a funk. And I'm not sure what it was that happened with his game, so that normally you would have expected him around the majors where his price is so low for a lot of people to jump in, and they really didn't.
No.
They really did not. They stayed away from him. He's only 7,300 this week. And if you look, again, we've kind of been talking about the U.S. Open as a par 70. We've been looking at Harbour Town, par 70 as well. Top 10s at both of those places. Excellent in terms of par 4 scoring. If he gets his putter going, obviously he can be dangerous. This guy is not going to win, probably. He doesn't win very many events, but certainly top 10 potential. And he's been in the top 25 here the last couple of years. So I think it's 7,300. He's definitely a guy that I'll be using for quite a few of my teams this week. How about you? Are there some guys in the 7,000 range that you're taking a look at?
The guy I probably like the most in the 7K range is Russell Knox at 7,500, I would say. Again, greens and reg guy. Great tee to green guy overall. So I like him. And then in the sleeper range, dropping down to 6,900, Smiley Kaufman I like.
Yeah, do you think everybody is now back in on him? Now that he's had a couple, obviously, I think most people are going to disregard what happened at the U.S. Open because so many rookies struggle there. But now he said, if you look at the other two performances around that, he's been very solid.
Yeah.
I think if you look back at his last WGC event, very solid finish. Is the secret out? Are people now not worried about the injury now? Are the floodgates open for ownership to come back?
Probably partially, I think. I don't think he's going to be as heavily owned as he was at one point when he was just on fire. Because then he took that big, long vacation, I guess, the spring break extended version.
SB2K16. Yeah, that's great.
But
that worked out so well for everybody.
Right. And Fowler, worked out well. But T20 and then a couple weeks ago, T10 last week. So I think The wrist injury is probably not an issue now, so I'm liking him. Anyone else in that 6K range that you like?
Well, there's a couple of guys in the 6K range. I think at 6,700, Soren Kjeldsen.
Yeah.
He's been a little bit. He's always up and down. It seems like in these big events, he's either contending or he's completely out of the mix.
Yeah.
Last year here, he was 12th place, so that was solid. He's been good in some of the other events. The Masters, he was obviously in the top 10. So at 6,700, you know he has the upside there. And I like finding some of the foreign players who are still maybe not quite as familiar for some of the bigger fantasy players around here. And there's not going to be so many who are going to jump on him. He didn't play that well at the U.S. Open in terms of missing the cut there. So there's certainly not going to be a rush for people to own him this week. But you're going to need to find a couple of those guys. When the field is only 60 players,
right,
you're going to probably have to find two guys that are owned by only 6 to 7% of the field in order to get that bump above everybody else. And I think Kjeldsen could definitely be one of those guys. Dropping a little bit lower, down to 6,200, is a guy named KT Kim out of Korea.
And what does KT stand for?
Oh, I'm not going to try that. That's not nice. That's just not nice. It's making me pronounce names. But KT Kim, actually, he plays on the Asian Tour, and he went through one of the most incredible 6-event stretches I think I've ever seen. So over a 6-event stretch on the Asian Tour, he actually won 3 events and finished no worse than 3rd in any of the other 3, which is incredible. And he came over to the U.S. Open and missed the cut. So you're working off of that. But again, U.S. Open, Oakmont, a little bit different from playing on the Asian courses. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. When he has played here at this event, at the Bridgestone, he's done really well. In 2013, he was 24th. In 2012, he was 6th. So again, at 6,200, that gives you a ton of cap space. If you need to load up on a couple of guys up there at the top, you're going to have to drop down and grab some of these guys. It's a no-cut event, so not a ton of risk. I think there's probably at least 15 players that I wouldn't even consider rostering who are worse. So I definitely don't mind taking a chance down there on KT, Tim. Are there any other guys that you would even consider in that range, or are you just content not to drop down?
Cut it off.
you're just done
I'm just
with
not
it.
going any lower.
You want nothing to do with it.
Nope,
Okay.
I don't. Nope. So that's all we got for PGA. I mean, it's just a smaller field. You want to talk a little Euro Tour?
I don't want to talk about Euro. Euro Tour was ridiculous.
That was
me
horrible last week. Although we heard from some members who did well. Perry did okay with his preview column. It was just so unpredictable last week. I know you were especially fond of Henrik Stenson's performance.
And I said it on the show though. But I said it on the show. I said I kind of felt like his withdrawal at the U.S. Open for an injury was complete bullshit. I don't know why I put that in quotes too, but I did. So, I had a feeling that it would be garbage.
Yeah,
and it seemed like the kind of event he would just bounce right back into over in Europe, and he'd play well. And sure enough, he did. Too bad he was just so banged up.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, that's you kind of expect. There's certain players that it doesn't surprise you when that kind of stuff happens. So Henrik, congratulations on your big victory. I mean, you really pulled a Willis Reed there by overcoming such a terrible injury to go on.
What Willis Reed, piece of garbage.
I wonder how many people in our audience even know who the fuck Willis Reed is. It's a good reference.
Quick Google.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a frustrating event. You know, I started my roster for Europe, my cash game roster, with Karlberg
and Hatton.
That
didn't go so well. Probably the hottest guys on the European Tour.
The two most consistent guys all season long, and they both just played like.
And then you mix in a Danny Willett, and good God, that was a mess.
Yeah, it didn't work out at all. So it was frustrating. It's been in Europe has not been easy. It's been entertaining to watch from week to week, but certainly not easy with some of the leaderboards. I am definitely looking forward to seeing events like this where you actually start to get a field where there's one or two players where you think, oh, I know who that guy is. I've seen him on TV before. Right. Yeah, so that's it'll be nice to get to this event. And it's a big event. It's a lot of, like I said before, a lot of Ryder Cup points, on the line. That's obviously coming up in the fall. So the European players, I think, take that more seriously
probably
than the U.S.
I had been doing well in cash games on the European Tour until last week where I just got smoked. But looking to bounce back. Let's look at the top. Obviously, Rory's here. Keimer at 10,900.
That seems to be a pretty aggressive price for Keimer.
I would say, yeah.
He's been playing really well. He was not fantastic.
Not great at the U.S. Open.
Which was a little bit of a disappointment. It
Yeah.
seems like right now, if he's in a European Tour event, there's a very good chance that he's going to do really well.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, he crosses the ocean and just struggles. I mean, he was off to a reasonable start. That Oakmont, he was kind of holding his ground and then just started slipping back. But it would not surprise me in the least if a guy like Keimer bounced back this week and did really well over in France, because that's just the way that he's been playing lately. Are you going to roster Rory on your teams this week, or are you going to be starting a little bit lower?
I'm going to be on Fade Town on Rory this week. I just don't like what I've seen at all on from Rory. Yeah. And he's just so much higher priced than everybody else. Francesco Molinari, 10,400.
Molinari, that high?
Nope.
It seems nuts.
I'm going to drop down. I think there's some decent guys in the 8,000 range. Cabrera Bello is only 8,200. I think that's good. For GPP purposes, I liked Olesen last week. I recommended him in my core, and he came up pretty big. So
you want to know who I'm going to start my rosters with this week?
I don't know. Do I?
We're going to go right back to Card Carlberg and Tyrell Hatton. We're gonna stick with the theme of they disappointed us last week, so we're gonna go back to these guys have both been amazing all season long over in Europe on European courses. So I don't see any reason to get away from them just because they had one lousy event a week ago. I think it's highly likely that both of these guys bounce back. Both these guys are priced in the 7,000s this week. Last week they're both in the mid 9,000s.
Yeah.
Now we get a deal on them. You can start your roster with these two guys who are well below the average price, and you've still got plenty of room to maneuver in terms of getting those top guys. So I think just for cash savings, and as well as the fact that I think most people are going to jump off, I'll probably just go straight back to those two guys.
Although I thought that of Bradley Dredge last week. I thought after his 2 straight miscuts where he was highly owned, I thought everyone would jump off him last week. They didn't. They were still on Bradley Dredge, so who knows?
And he did bounce back.
He did, yeah.
Which was good.
One of the few that I was right on.
Are you going to go back to Richard Bland this week? It seems like he's been the guy who he's been sort of like what Charles Howell III was for us last year. Mm-hmm. The guy you just put up every week onto your roster in that 7,000 range, and he just makes the cut week in and week out. He's been super dependable all season long, much the way Carlberg and Hatton had been up until last week. I think he's another guy that you can probably lock in, especially for your cash game rosters. I think he'll still be. The buzz is starting to slowly build for those who are following Europe every week. He's going to be on more and more rosters as he keeps making cuts, but definitely a great cash game play.
I also like Thomas Peters. I think he has huge upside, and he's only 7,100 this week, so he's a guy I like a lot for GPPs.
Okay.
Anyone else you like down below?
Not yet. I don't think. Well, the thing is, I don't think I have to get too low in terms of pricing this week. Now that the stars have come over a little bit. A lot of the guys that we've been seeing over the last few weeks that have been priced in that higher 9,000 and 10,000 range. Yeah. Now they're pushed down into the 7 to 8K range.
Right.
So you're not having to make quite as many tough choices. You're not having to dive into the 6,500 range and grab one or two guys that don't have a ton of history or you're not terribly familiar with. I think I can keep a pretty balanced approach for my cash game lineups this week and feel a little more comfortable of hopefully at least getting 5 of 6 through the cut line, because 5 of 6 is gold in Europe so far from what I've seen.
We'll leave the rest up to Perry, who his article is currently up on the website. For those of you who have the European Tour package, if you don't, sign up for it and you can get access to Perry's column. But that'll do it for us. I should mention, and next week we're going to Las Vegas, and we've heard from several of you who want to meet up, so let's definitely do it. And also, we won't be having a webcast next week, not because we're going to Vegas. We already had it scheduled, but because the Greenbrier Classic was canceled. Our thoughts are with those who were affected by that flood and everything. It was terrible. There were a lot of casualties, so our thoughts go out to all of them, and unfortunately, Because of that, we won't have a tournament next week, so we won't do a webcast.
Hopefully we'll get the open pricing will come out by Monday.
Yep.
I would assume, just because there's no tournament the following weeks, there wouldn't be a lot of reason to delay that. So we will probably be working tirelessly on the 4th of July before we go to get out as much Euro coverage, the open coverage, I guess, as we can before the event, to try to give you as much time as possible to kick off your research on that. So.
Yes. Yep. So that's all we got for you this week. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Email us with any questions or anything strategy-wise at info@fantasygolfinsider.com.
Let us know if you're going to be in Vegas. We'd love to catch up with folks. We'll probably be wearing some of our gear around, so come up and say hello and introduce yourself to make pump up our egos a little bit about being a big deal.
Right. At Fantasy Golfers is our Twitter handle. So good luck this week, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good luck.